the most expensive washing machine in America. I just bought the Speed Queen and it's worth more than my car, but I drive a 2005 Hyundai Accent, so that's really not saying much. With an MSRP of 1,299 US dollars, it's far and away America's most expensive washing machine. But what could make it cost so much money that it just towers above the rest? Let's test, tear down, and compare this washing machine against one or two others just to see exactly why it is or not worth all of that money. What kind of company could charge this much for a washing machine in the first place when we live in a world of $500 to $700 cheap machines? Well, it's built by Speed Queen, which has an incredible reputation in the United States for building durable commercial washing machines like the TC5, which has a really small but devoted fan base of users. So, the company that ranks consistently number one for user satisfaction from Consumer Reports, and they typically have the highest reliability score as well. But since they're ugly and lower capacity, they tend to rank near the bottom of Consumer Reports rankings, which, according to most Speed Queen devotees, says a lot more about Consumer Reports than it does about Speed Queen. So, in these tests, we're going to try to find out if this is a Queen Victoria, which is beloved by all, or more like a Marie Antoinette. Speed Queen has built a reputation on no frills design, so this unit is quite a bit utilitarian looking. But when you realize that reliability is the most important thing to some people, it makes total sense. The unit is an absolute tank. The wash tub is stainless steel both on the inside and out. That's something you never see. The exterior is a thick, three-coated finish and feels like an absolute unit of a washing machine. The solid construction makes the unit weigh in at 270 pounds shipped, which pushes it about 50 to 60 pounds heavier than comparable washing machines from other brands like Amana, LG, or GE. Even before running your first load, you become familiar with the fact that this unit has a panel at the bottom. You have to remove it to take out a thick metal plate that holds the shipping bolts into the front of the drum. In decades past, other front loaders like the Whirlpool Duet, for example, had these, which made repairs and inspections a breeze, but they went by the wayside for form over function, and some only have holes for the drain pump filter itself. You can easily see and access the drain pump, control board, and suspension system from here. Talking about the suspension system, you can see first off that this was engineered to be way longer lasting than what typical shock absorbers have and what they look like on residential machines. This particular kind you see here is a Frigidaire rod. By comparison, here's one of the four shock absorbers that this FF7009 has on it. There's absolutely no comparison. These rods are held in place on welded panels on the outer stainless steel wash tub and are just insanely heavy duty. A single Speed Queen shock is nearly the size of two Frigidaires stacked on top of each other. This means that the entire unit can be self-supported from the bottom. The side and rear panels could be removed, allowing the wash tub to be freestanding, which notes how much this design is built to be fixed and replaced rather than be thrown away like many other machines that have a uniformed body on them. The motor is a 1 horsepower variety, which is about as large as you're going to find on most washing machines, and the pulley system that the belt rests on is just a solid chunk of metal. It's about the same size that you would see other rotor and stator systems, but it's just so much more solidly built. The key on all these physical components is that Speed Queen washers, whether they're top or front load, are generally designed to last between 20 and 25 years before needing replaced. And that's the major reason why Speed Queens command a price that is way higher than any other machine on the market. Going back to the machine though, dimension-wise, it's very similar to any of the competition. It's under 27 inches wide, 41 inches tall, and 28 inches deep. Very similar to the competition, but when it comes to the interface, you get a treasure trove of options. Since there's no fancy phone app, Wi-Fi, or rotator knobs, you get buttons. You get lots of them. Every kind of button, your button has buttons. The amount of control you get on this machine is just incredible. One concern, though, that people are probably going to mention or wonder about is capacity. The machine is smaller than other front load brands at 3.5 cubic feet, but Speed Queen is notorious historically for small tubs. This is larger, though, than their top load offerings like the TC and TR units, which boast 3.2 cubic feet tubs. I found that this machine, when loading it with laundry time and time again, it easily holds the 12 pounds of laundry I test, but Speed Queen says it will hold far more if you just pack it in, up to 20 or 22 pounds. But I didn't really want to test that as I didn't have enough clothes to really pack it down as much as you could. And this queen definitely needs a royal test of capabilities. One of the things that I want to do is test some of the stain removal qualities in it. So we're going to test 10 kinds of stains as we do loads of laundry: coffee, ketchup, red wine, motor oil, cranberry juice, pasta sauce, mustard, lipstick, barbecue sauce, and finally, Hershey's chocolate syrup. I also wanted to try a few other things like blood, but no one was really willing to help me out and provide that for the video, willingly at least. The other thing I splurged on with this video when it comes to stain removal is a color spectrometer. This tests the stains to see how much they fade after a wash. Even if your eyes deceive you, it's not going to fool this device. It gives a 3-number color value that I'm charting in our computer and taking the total sum of the color values and comparing them against a white shirt. And that yields kind of like a cleaning score that we can test against other modes and competitors, because I want to do a lot of comparisons going forward on future videos. And even though it's not in this video, the Speed Queen TC5, that's a huge competitor. And I did buy one that we're going to test in another video. So make sure to subscribe for that one, where we put this front load against the Speed Queen top load head to head with some direct measurements. For loading the machine on this test load, I'm folding the test shirt the same every time, keeping the stains on the inside of the fold, which would theoretically make it harder for this machine to wash the shirt. And I'm doing that for every load on every machine that we do going forward, because I assume that the stains are going to stay inside a little bit better this way, and we want the machine to be able to break the unit apart and agitate and clean these stains off. For our first test, we're going to do a normal load with heavy soil, warm temperature, and the unit's going to take 48 minutes of runtime, which is arguably on the lower-ish end of front load washers, as front load washers tend to take longer than their top load counterparts, and most washes run typically around the 4-hour mark. We're using the same detergent in every test. 2 Tide Pods in my favorite flavor. One key thing here is that the detergent you use matters a lot on stain removal, quite a lot. But at least by keeping the detergent the same, we can rule that out affecting any of the results. Now, when it comes to running the machine, one key thing that you notice about this unit is that the moment you push start, the machine actually starts running as soon as you push the button, unlike almost every other brand. The door locks, it immediately starts with a countdown. One of the more frustrating things I've seen with dealing on a lot of machines is that other washing machines take a while to start washing. Even if they tell you that it's going to be a certain amount of time, many units will take 1 to 3 minutes of unlisted time before they actually begin to count down the wash. And this one doesn't, which is really great. It immediately starts filling with water. When the machine runs, one thing that I noticed or I didn't notice was the noise. Some people complain about the noise of Speed Queen washers, but at least in the FF7, it was a quiet giant running at only 54 decibels when I was in operation. I did the same test with an LG and GE unit in the past, and both of those machines actually ran louder at 55 and 56 decibels, respectively, on agitate or wash mode. So this was the winner between any other machine I've tested. Another thing that I have to say about the tests, I found an issue mid wash on, I think, the second load. And this applies to every one of these tests that we do initially. The hot water heater died before filming this, and I didn't realize this until we had these washes taken care of. When it comes to stains, hot water or warm water can really help. So take these tests with a grain of salt, since they're all cold water tests. However, we did fix it for the last 2 tests. At the end of the first test, there was still plenty of stuff left on the unit stain-wise. Using the color spectrometer, we found a difference score of 296.22. The unit used 15 gallons of water and had a total cycle time of 47 minutes. On the second load, we used a heavy duty with heavy but not max soil. This put the total runtime at 49 minutes, so barely more than the normal mode. Despite the slightly higher runtime, the results were vastly improved on the spectrometer and also the eye test that used 19.2 gallons of water, and the stain difference score was 249.26. It dropped nearly 50 points, so it's way improved. On the third test, I went ahead and put it in for a much longer runtime, 1 hour and 10 minutes. By comparison to other washers, this is not that long, but without getting into really oddball modes on this, you can only get the machine to about an hour and a half without jamming every single option possible. One nice thing about the Speed Queen washer manual is you know exactly what the washing machine's doing at any time. The cycles are pretty much set, which is the opposite of newer AI wash machines. They don't really tell you exactly what it's going to do when. For example, the Stain Boost always adds a 20-minute cold water wash to the system. using the pre-washed laundry detergent compartment. One problem I suppose with this test is that I'm using the same two pods every time on the top, so we're not using any sort of pre-washed detergent that this unit but any others can take advantage of. Despite, though, all these things, the test scores improved yet again. This was the best wash yet with a stain removal score of 215.25. The unit used 22.1 gallons of water, so barely more than the last test. The numbers, though, are totally meaningless without having a competitor. And I was working on a Samsung Bespoke AI combo wash video on how to maintain them, so this is probably one of the more similar units that would be directly opposite of a Speed Queen washer, since Samsung front loads are known historically as being unreliable, but they tend to wash quite well. I tried to use identical modes on the Samsung: heavy soil, high spin, warm wash. The first mode says 48 minutes, but as mentioned early, that lovely preparing screen takes an extra minute or two, so the total time on the first run is 50 minutes. The Samsung used 14.8 gallons of cold water. When it came out of the machine, we had a stain score of 259.37, better than the first FF7 wash, but worse than the second heavy-duty load that was 1 minute shorter on the Speed Queen in total time. On the second Samsung load, we went with the heavy duty mode, and holy cow, the wash time on this Samsung is beyond crazy. At a total runtime of 1 hour and 48 minutes, which turned into 1 hour and 50 minutes with load sensing, it showed a slightly better overall time, but it took forever. However, when we actually removed these from the unit after the wash and dry on the Speed Queen dryer, you can see on screen it absolutely beat the FF7 handily, which reminds me a lot of Final Fantasy Tactics. Longer, slower, but in the end a lot better. The stain removal score on this one was 181.43, and it used 18.4 gallons of water, significantly better at a significantly higher cost of runtime. I'm starting to run out of tests, so I do have one final Samsung to do before we get to the rest of the video and I get the hot water tank fixed. I dropped some runtime to match the best test on the Speed Queen. In the case of the Samsung and the different loading and sensing options, we got it to about 80 minutes compared to the 70-minute mode on the FF7. And when we do the wash and dry, the Samsung had a stain score of 218.76. It was about 3 points worse than the best on the FF7, which the Samsung ran an extra 10 minutes on. This is what all 8 shirts look like next to each other visually, and again, here's a sum total of the soil scores where the camera probably didn't do that test full justice. Now with the hot water tanks just about ready to go, let's inspect some of the components on the washing machine in a teardown analysis. When you get down underneath it, the drain pump on this unit is identical to the commercial washing machines you find at your local laundromat from Speed Queen. It's probably the easiest pump to service ever. The other part I documented that I didn't actually film was pulling the motor control board. I'm not sure why Speed Queen only had this one board at the underneath side. Outside of that, though, here's what you have with the pump and control board systems once they're removed from the unit. Both feel well built and quite sturdy, and as we can start to get into some of these parts to see who makes them for Speed Queen. The drain pump is the typical clamshell design that almost all the new systems on the market have. There's a bracket that holds it on in place, which has 5 screws. The manufacturer of the pump is Hanning and has a CE stamp on it, which means it is Chinese made. Next up on this motor control board, I'm more interested in this even than the drain pump. It was manufactured in Mexico by Deal. Deal is primarily responsible for Bosch washer control systems and inverters in all their washing machines. They've made a lot of boards for other OEMs like Whirlpool as well, but not for their washing machines as far as I know. On a component level inspection, there's a lot of Sanyu relays and Samzon capacitors on it. Samzon, or however you want to pronounce it, is a Taiwanese manufacturer of capacitors. Sanyu is a Chinese company, but very common in relays, and these components remind me of what you would find on a Samsung washing machine, which Samsung makes great electronics, but still. Now, I went ahead and decided to take the front off the washing machine and inspect inside for the balance ring and door lock primarily. If you've ever read about Speed Queen's balancing system, there are actually steel ball bearings inside the assembly just behind the gasket that helps the unit self-level during its high spin speed mode, which works out really, really well when paired with the extremely well-built suspension system. Going over to the door lock mechanism, it's really well built. When you take the cover off, you find out behind the cover that the manufacturer of this is Bitron. I was really happy to see that was the manufacturer of this piece. I expected to see more of them in this unit because they generally have made great parts in the appliance industry and are very well liked, at least by my staff, because you see them consistently on really old Whirlpool and Bosch electrical systems and other physical parts. I can't figure out where the country of origin on this one is, but it's a higher quality door lock. One key area on this has metal reinforcement where the striking mechanism goes. This tends to fatigue over time, and other companies tend to just make this plastic, whereas again, this was metal, again, lending to the idea this is a 20 to 25-year machine. Everything else on the washing machine is really durable, but I think the board could be an Achilles heel from a quality standpoint. I've had a few techs mention this to me as well, although it's probably way better built than, say, a GE motor control board. I'm not a fan of it pulling double duty between the motor and operational controls. The board on this FF7 MSRPs for over $600, which means if it breaks outside of the 5-year warranty, it's going to be a very costly repair. And it's possible maybe that it would go bad within the 20 to 25-year predicted lifespan, but it's hard to say for certain. On the interface side, it's rather easy to get into as well. 4 screws on the top, but there are 4 screws behind the interface. It is not the easiest to get to, but you do find the schematic when trying to look for the access to this board, which is great. This interface is made by Ego out of Mexico, and that's an interesting choice to me. You can tell that this board was meant more than just the FF7, and I would assume would work in multiple other Speed Queen washer interfaces based on the pinouts, like the TR7 or the other top load units that have this type of touchscreen interface. Ego is quite well known for their cooking systems. They make a lot of control boards for Bosch and their washing machines, stoves, and such. For whatever it's worth, the reputation is quite stellar in my experience, and I think Ego is a great choice on the electronics for this interface. Overall, the physical components on the washer are stellar and are definitely there to provide a much more durable lifespan on your washer. Speed Queen washers are designed to have a lifespan of 10,000 washes or more, and there's no reason to think that this washing machine wouldn't meet that number for all the major components. Although it's possible you could have 1 or 2 repairs on this in its lifetime, and even the person I bought this off of at the Speed Queen dealer said you may run into some hiccups on this machine, but the idea isn't so much that it's going to last forever, but it's going to be repairable up to about 25 years. With the hot water tank repaired and only 2 shirts left that I can do to end this video, we're trying 2 hot water washes as close as we can get them to each other. On the Speed Queen, we're using a heavy duty, hot temperature, max soil wash with soak and pre-wash selected. And I did use a Tide Pod in the pre-wash for this one, and it has a total runtime of 94 minutes in all. During the wash cycle, it ended up using 5 gallons of hot water and 16.8 gallons of cold water. Once we pulled this out of the unit from the washer, then the dryer, and began the spectral test, it was the best FF7 wash that we tried. It had a total stain score of 189.43. It wasn't as good as the Samsung cold wash at 110 minutes, but it was pretty close with significantly less time overall. For the second test, instead of going back to the Samsung, I went ahead and used my LG WKEX200, which I had a normal load using turbo wash on, but the way I have this set up runs a ton of time just like the FF7. In total on this LG, it took 1 hour and 34 minutes, which was identical to the FF7. For hot water usage, the unit had 1.2 gallons of hot water and 11.3 gallons of cold water, equaling a total of 12.5 gallons in total. It's possible that it could have used the onboard water heater to treat the water better, but I'm not sure about that. And when it came to the final hot water test for the LG, it got a stain score of 180.52. It's the best of any test we did during this video. It barely beat out the best of the FF7 and Bespoke tests, and I'm going to have a link at the end of the video with all the crazy testing data for anyone that wants to see exactly what happened on the screen, because sometimes the camera lies, but the numbers don't. Also, tell me what you think about this test that we did and how I can make things better in the future when we try this against other washers and detergents as well. Okay, now that we have a few dozen washes in the books on this machine and a teardown of the key components, what is the most important takeaway in my opinion, from America's most expensive washing machine. It's obvious that this unit is just so much better built than any other washing machine I've taken apart in my videos. It weighs more, everything's thicker, obviously everything's a whole lot better built on this. Even the shipping brackets are better built than the competitors. It runs like a tank, and I absolutely expect it to last a lot longer than any other washing machine on the market that you'd find in residential settings. Although I have some questions about the control board, it's the only part that I really could be critical on in the machine, as everything else is just really well built. However, if I was going to be fully honest about the machine, I think it is a little bit overpriced. At $2,200, it is $1,000 more expensive than most other competing front load washers, and it's $800 or $900 more expensive than competing Speed Queen top load washers like the TC5 and the TR5 or TR7. One of the biggest advantages that something like this has in the Speed Queen name brand, the TC5 is only a few $100s more expensive than your competing washing machines, and it ends up being able to last 3 or 4 times longer as opposed to the competitors. But if you compare this FF7009 against, say, an LG WM4000 HBA, it's essentially 3 times the price for probably would be 3 times the lifespan, and the math isn't that great. But where this machine would excel at that you should choose to purchase is if reliability is your most important quality, bar none. Large families, Airbnbs, salons, other commercial businesses, on-premises laundry, or places where you're going to use the heck out of this machine is your best bet, because the total lifetime cost of this unit is going to be far more affordable than the sticker shock if you factor in other considerations like energy and water efficiency. A key consideration on this that we didn't go too in depth on this video, that we will in a later video, is that the water extraction on this unit is going to annihilate, say, a Speed Queen TC5. This unit spins at 1200 RPM versus the TC5 at 710 RPM. That means that you use less energy in your dryer to heat and dry your clothes, which will save you hundreds of dollars over the lifespan of this unit, much less the fact that the water usage on this machine was excellent. If you were using city water at an estimated 1.5 cents per gallon, this machine could save you thousands of dollars over the lifespan of 20 years or 10,000 washes. These factors would actually make this machine potentially cheaper than a TC5 or TR7 over the long run. Now, on our soil tests, this was the first time I really tried something extensive and scientific. And I can't say that these tests are absolutely perfect because of me, not because of the tests, but it's pretty clear that the FF7 did not do better than the competition for hot or cold washes, although it did almost as good. Final remaining question on this machine, and I want to test, is how does this wash compare to a TC5? I live streamed a video against the TC5 and we didn't go into super deep tests, so I want to get some more shirts and do more stain tests. In the end, the FF7 could be the best washing machine you'll ever buy, or it could be a little bit overpriced depending on what you really want in your washing machine. If you're going to run this for 10 or 15,000 loads, yes, it makes total sense, especially if you're going to use that in less than 20 or 25 years. I've tried to give it an unbiased opinion as best as possible on this machine, but if someone from Speed Queen Corporate was watching this video, my opinion is this would be the best machine on the market if you could make it just a little bit more affordable. I think at $1,500 to $1,700, this machine would be a no-brainer, but it's not $1,500 to $1,700 because I paid $2,200 plus tax. But for what I paid on the machine with $2,200, this unit does make the most sense if you're running it every day consistently and you're doing a lot more loads of clothes than what a normal family would, so that maybe that 20-year lifespan is a little bit shorter because you're getting way over the 10,000 estimated washes on it. That's where you would get a lot of money and value out of the machine. Otherwise, the price versus longevity, there are other cheaper models out there that may make more sense, in my opinion, and I am not favoring this machine as much as I'd hoped when I paid so much and bought it in the first place. And remember though, if this machine does make sense for you, I will have links in the description as well as the YouTube shopping carousel on where to buy the machine. It was not easy for me to actually buy this machine. I had to wait a few weeks to get it from a local Speed Queen dealer. That is typically the best place to get it, and I don't have links for your local Speed Queen dealer, but there are a few places online that you can buy this from that will install and set it up for you as well. And it does help the channel out if you use those links, but I understand if you don't. I did approach Speed Queen's social media team about adding links in this video for affiliate purposes, and they said no. So I only have so much to work with. I hope that you enjoyed this video. And again, make sure to keep watching for the TC5 video versus this, because I think that video is going to be really interesting when we try a few different key modes on both machines, both for time as well as water consumption, to see what turns out better. Have a great day.